and with maximum sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. I think somebody is not muted.
Everyone kindly ensure that your mics are muted, please.
Okay, I'll proceed. So it's moving to the west-northwest still, and with forward speed relatively fast of 20 miles per hour. The track is for Beryl to continue on a west-northwesterly track for the remainder of today and take a turn more towards the west later tonight or tomorrow, Thursday. On that forecast track, Beryl is expected to move south of the Cayman Islands tomorrow, still as a major hurricane, and then weaken slightly as it moves more into the northwestern Caribbean Sea, and eventually making landfall on the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico as either a strong Category 1 or weak Category 2 hurricane. Um, Not much has changed since this morning in terms of the track forecast. It remains still relatively the same place as it was. We remain under a tropical storm watch from Belize City northward to the border with Mexico, including the islands of San Pedro and Kikaker. And again, reminding residents in those areas that a tropical storm watch means that tropical storm conditions are possible within the watch area, in this case, within the next 36 hours or so. The radius of tropical storm force winds, since that is what we're looking at here, extend on the southern quadrant or the southern semicircle of the storm, extend out to about 80 miles. And if you look at the map between the projected location of landfall and the border with Mexico, that's a little bit over, I would say, 100 miles. Therefore, we are looking at the possibility, like I said, there's a small chance that the extreme northern parts of the areas under watch would experience tropical storm force winds if the system takes the most probable path and moves within the center of the cone. There is always that small chance that it moves on the southern edge of the cone, which would necessitate, of course, us upgrading this thing to a warning, a tropical storm warning, or even a hurricane warning. That is a very small chance. We, of course, keep monitoring for that particular reason. We look at any slight jog to the west, any shift in terms of the track, and we make that determination. But we are not there yet. We are still monitoring it, and we do have the watch in place to alert residents in this particular area that there is the possibility that they may experience tropical storm conditions, like I said, late Thursday into Friday morning. Now, apart from the winds of a tropical storm, which is between 39 miles per hour and 73 miles per hour, there are other hazards associated with the system, which includes heavy rainfall, and the rainfall projections now are at for 4 to 6 inches of rainfall as the system crosses, with locally higher values. Of course, we are aware of the situation in terms of the saturated soils. I believe our principal hydrologist may be online, I'm not sure, to discuss on the possibility of flooding due to those rainfall. And of course, with the relatively strong and gusty winds, we expect sea conditions to be rough. We do expect some swells to be generated by the system and create large battering waves that may affect portions of the coast in the watch area as well. So those are some of the hazards that we're looking at with the system as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula over the next 36 to 48 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Met. So the principal hydrologist, Ms. Tanil Hende, she was on, but she's currently experiencing some technical difficulties, so she will drop out and then reconnect. And we're also waiting for NEC, Captain Daniel Menez, who should be joining us shortly. In the meantime, I guess we can take some questions from the media while we wait for Ms. Hende to reconnect. Kindly raise your hands and then we can proceed with some of the questions. Go ahead, Marcel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chief Met, by when would you say that fishermen should already be in away from the island because, like, for instance, this afternoon we met one who said that he's going back out there. Actually, two. One says they're going to stay, and the other one says they're gonna go back and try to leave by midday tomorrow.
Yes, thanks, Marisol, for that question. Again, these are questions that I like to push over to NEMO, but since Mr. Mendes is not online yet. But in terms of the weather conditions and the deteriorating conditions, we do not anticipate or expect to be receiving tropical storm related conditions until about late tomorrow night into Friday morning. And that, in my opinion, would give persons at least until midday to be on the safe side to seek safe harbor. Once conditions warrant it, we are going to, of course, be issuing a small craft warning. And typically for us, a small craft warning means that operators of small vessels should not venture out to sea and should seek and remain in safe harbor.
Thanks for the question, Marcel. Thanks, Chief Met. We can now move over to Jules, channel 7.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon. If I we see the coordinates of the storm as it continues to track west northwest is at I think 17.5 north longitude. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we know Belize City is located at I think 17.1. So as it continues on its west northwest track, is there anything foreseeable that could again push it back south? We spoke about the high pressure system from the southeast of the US, but is there anything that could interact with it that could see it start to tick down? Anything foreseeable that could interact with it that could see it start to tick back down?
First of all, no, to correct you a bit there, Jules, Belize City is exactly at 17.5 north, which is exactly where the storm is in terms of latitude. So it is due east of Belize City at the moment and moving west northwesterly away. Well, not away, but generally towards us, but already moving north of Belize's Belize City. I should emphasize a location, no? In terms of whether there will be any system to push it back down, we still are not completely, I would not want to say no. There is always that small probability that you could have some anomalous feature developing that would do that. And that would be perhaps the ridge building a bit stronger than the models are suggesting. But again, we have to go with the model consensus. There are several models that are pointing in the same direction, and that gives us confidence, more confidence that they are seeing the same thing, and therefore they are heading into that general direction.
If I could ask a follow-up. So now where are we with the forecast on the strength? Because we spoke this morning about the countervailing forces, high level of wind shear, but countervailed by extremely warm waters. Is the storm weakening as expected? It's down to 140 now, but while I know that maximum sustained wind forecasts are always the most unpredictable, is the storm behaving as forecasted as regards the maximum sustained winds, or is it still anomalously high or higher than would have been forecast?
To answer your question, let's say that I have looked exactly at what was forecasted for this afternoon and compared with what is happening. I haven't really matched up those figures, but it has weakened compared to this morning. As we know, it was at 145, it's down to 5. It's interacting with the Jamaican terrain, which is also having some effect. But it is a resilient system. In physics, we have something we call inertia. That means a force that is moving or something that is moving resists changes, especially if it has a high momentum, no? Moving really fast. Therefore, it is hard to spin down. And that's what perhaps we're seeing with this particular system, given the fact that it was a Category 5 hurricane at one point, spinning down and weakening. It has that resistance. But all indications, having said that, are that it will continue to weaken. The forecast still says that it will be a Category 1 or 2 hurricane at landfall. Well, it was earlier saying a Category 1, but there's a possibility it may be a Category 2. It was forecasted to remain a major hurricane tomorrow as it passes near Cayman, which is still the forecast. So again, we know that intensity forecasts, well, no forecast is exact. And intensity forecast in particular, there is some leeway. So we are watching that also, and to see whether it will slow down or weaken to the extent that the models had indicated.
Are we seeing a system? We know how historically anomalous it is for to have a storm of this strength this early in the season, but is it confounding the expectations, the intensity at least? Is it confounding expectations? Because really, in recorded history, we've never had such warm waters at this time of year. So the models really are confounded when it comes to, or are somewhat undermined when it comes to predicting intensity.
I don't believe it's because of the exceptional warm waters that the models have problem with intensity. The models have problem with intensity regardless of anything. That has been a challenge in terms of forecasting the strengths of hurricane for several years. The physics, I like to say this, doesn't matter how much climate change occurs or how much the climate changes, the physics of the atmosphere will not change. Physics is constant in time. Those are physical laws of the universe, and they will not change no matter how much there is human-induced climate change. The models are based on physical equations, and they will perform based on those equations. So I say to say that, yes, we see the unprecedented changes in intensity, especially the rapid intensification. And we do know that models struggle with that, but that has always been the case.
Okay, and then finally from me, um, the difference between making landfall on the Yucatan as a Category 1 or Category 2, even if it is in the central Yucatan Peninsula. I see that I'm frozen here. I don't know if it's working over there, but I hope it's working. So, but
Frozen.
how consequential are we good, Giovanna?
No, your feed is frozen. Your video is frozen.
That's so weird. 1 second. Hold on. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, we're back. You're back.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so how consequential is the difference in handling Category 2 storm making landfall on the Yucatan Peninsula as opposed to a Category 1? How consequential is it for Belize, which is on the, forecasted to be on the southern side of the eye of the storm?
So the size of the storm and its intensity are not directly related. So if it makes landfall as a Category 2 and it remains a compact system, it will not have any significant, it will not make a significant difference. If the radii of tropical storm force winds do not expand and increase, then we'll still be under the same situation, whether it's a Category 2 or 3 hurricane.
Thank you, Jules. Paul, before we get to your question, allow me to introduce you guys today to Miss Tenille Hende, the principal hydrologist. She's here with us. So, Paul, after your question, we can move over to her. And I'd like to inform you also that unfortunately, NEC Captain Mendez will not be able to join us in this session because he got caught up with some other matters. But we'll proceed with the rest of the press briefing. Paul, go ahead.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. So I wanted to know if the storm continues down the projected path and it maintains the level of strength that is forecasted at landfall 1 or 2. What can we expect for the Orange Walk district and the Belize district, Belize City in particular, when it comes to the level of rainfall? I know a lot of people are asking, people in the comments from Orange Walk are wondering what sort of impact will they receive? Can we expound on that a bit? I don't know what's the level of information we have there to provide in terms of level of rainfall in Orange Walk, Belize City, what sort of rainfall levels can we expect, maybe wind speeds, just if we can go a bit more detailed into the impact in those areas as of right now, what we know.
Yes, thank you, Paul. As I have always said, no, precision and details will increase with time. We're still 36 hours out. And to be honest with you, we know that forecast will never be precise. It will never be precise to the level that people would want in terms of precision and details. But just to give you some idea, we do know that the extreme north of the country, as I said before, will be the area that will be most impacted by the winds. Those will decrease rapidly as we move away from that area. For instance, in Belize City, based on what we are seeing currently, we are looking at a windy, gusty day with winds of about 15 to 25 knots late Thursday, Friday, due to the system. Orange Walk perhaps increasing to about 20 to 30 knots, and then further up it will be a bit higher. And those mostly are in gusts. We do, in terms of rainfall, we have looked at the latest figures from the models. They are not too reliable. I'm not trusting them too much. The GFS, which is typically referred to as the American model by some forecasters, for us is showing very minimal rainfall. We are erring on the side of caution, knowing that we have a tropical system making landfall just to the north of us. So we have projected the rainfalls to be at least 4 to 6 inches, and those could occur in feeder bands, which those models typically don't resolve very well. So certainly we are anticipating, or not anticipating, but looking at the possibility of about 4 to 6 inches of rainfall with locally higher values affecting the country. I cannot specify right now if it's going to be Orange Rock, Corozal, or even Belize, because we do know that feeder bands can occur far away from the system.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you all for your questions directed at the Chief Meteorologist. Now we will hand it over to Ms. Tennille Hendon, the Principal Hydrologist, for an update. Afternoon, Ms. Hendy.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you and apologies for being disconnected earlier, but it was unavoidable. Seems to be some internet connections. But just to update on the existing or the current flood forecast, we do have an urbanized flood warning in effect from Belize City to Corozal districts. And there is also a flood alert in the south for the Moho and Temash rivers, as those water levels have been rapidly increasing since our forecast this morning. The flood outlook and in regards to the update given by Chief Met, we expect that those areas that are in the north that are still suffering from persisting flooding conditions, we expect that to continue. And for those who have, expect a compounding effect given the very conservative 6 inches of rainfall that is expected.
Thanks, Ms. Hendy. Any questions from the media? Kindly raise your hand if you have any. Okay, Mike?
Good afternoon. I don't believe that anybody in here might be able to answer, but I wanted to put it out there because I've seen a lot of queries and on Facebook and a lot of queries coming into us as regards the possibility of power outages, considering that the storm is heading north into Mexico and CFE might be compromised. So, like I said, I don't know if the Chief Met is able to provide any answer as to whether there has been any discussion or on that being a possibility. or if we can just maybe table that question for tomorrow morning's briefing.
Yes, I think that would be an excellent idea to put it off until tomorrow. I concur that given that the system will be making landfall on Mexico, and that we know that we rely on some level of, we do rely on them for some amount of our energy generation, then there is likely to be some effect. But again, I think it's best we leave that for tomorrow. Also, with the winds on our side, there is a possibility with tropical storm force winds in the extreme north that you could have power lines being affected as well. So that's also something to consider.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, in line with that question, and we had asked it before today, Principal Hydrologist Ms. Sende, in regards to the dams and power generation, is there any update in regards to whether um, the dams are in effect distributing generating power?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, my response remains the same as on Monday because the electricity generation is more of a fortis function. I can seek clarification from them, but I think it would best be directed to them in terms of the generation. No? What I failed to communicate earlier in my briefing is that our flood forecast will be updated as the system progresses. And so we will be providing that update to our usual stakeholders. So as the system passes, we'll be having updated flood forecasts.
Another question, Ms. Sende, and it was important what you said about what we think because of all the rain, that many areas will be saturated, but you spoke on the matter of what happened because of the heat and the wildfires and even the agricultural land. I might not be saying it right, but it was important to me for the farmers that there's a cross, and so the water won't readily seep through, but will be running off. Could you go over that again for me, please?
Sure, no problem. What happens is that when the soil is at normal, if we want to say, it's not been a drought period or intense wildfires impacting the soil moisture, the soil is very loose. And so it allows water, any element to be subsumed or passes through that medium. With the drought, it then compacts that soil somewhat and it reduces that function of any element being able to pass through it. So it effectively stops the ecosystem function. So if something is hard, nothing can go through it, it just runs over it. So this is one of the elements that has severely impacted flooding and flood levels and how long they persist in combination with the effect of nearby rivers or lagoons or creeks, their abilities to absorb that water that has run off into those systems. If they are already full, they cannot perform that function. They're at maximum capacity and the water has to go somewhere. And it will take the least part of resistance, and it might be through our yards. It might be, in our wells if they're low enough. So we need to account for all of these things that may happen that we have not seriously looked at before. So we absolutely need to safeguard our domestic wells if we have them, if they're low enough, have them covered to prevent any runoff from entering those wells, because then it travels underground and it not only affects you, but it affects persons downstream of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hendy. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, then I think we can go ahead with wrapping up today's briefing.
Can I just say one last thing before we leave, Ms. Mogil?
Sure.
We are under a tropical storm watch, and I repeat, that means And that's for the north of the country, from Belize to the northward, including the islands. That means that tropical storm conditions are possible in that area. I want to clarify perhaps a misconception in the public that from a watch, you must go to a warning. It is not necessarily the case. A watch means that we monitor, and if we notice that the system is shifting further north, or if that the tropical storm force winds will not extend into our area, then the watch can be downgraded and you don't go into a warning. So I think that is important. A watch does not necessarily means that will escalate to a warning. Just want to leave the public with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. And thank you to members of the media for your questions. We know that you're very important with disseminating this information to the public. And thank you to the public who joined in on today's live. We'll wrap up today, but we'll meet you again tomorrow morning at 7:30 with that briefing.